Welcome back to episode 66 of the Disorganized Wizard Club podcast. My name is Alex. I'm here as always with Cam.
Hey.
And joining us this week, we have Ronald McKenzie, honorary member of the 12 Forcemen, Genghis Wrong, former player of the year.
What do you mean honorary member of the 12? He was an actual member of the 12.
Member.
Yeah. Legacy
Two-time
player
winner.
for the 12 Forcemen. Owner
Team
of 4
Trash
forces.
Can.
Yeah.
We could go on.
Captain of Team Trash Can?
Oh, I like to think so.
Yeah. We'll say captain of the Team Trash Can. Adam's away. He left to go home for Christmas.
Yep.
So we only got one episode with a doctor.
Yeah, he flew back to Alberta. We got kind of, he obviously he's in a group chat with us, and he had a layover in Winnipeg. So we get to hear from him at the Ottawa airport. Like, man, airports suck. This is like so annoying. Got to stand here through security. Takes forever. You got to show up so early. Then there's like radio silence for a couple hours. Then, man, layovers suck. Nothing to do. Stuck in Winnipeg. Radio silence for a couple hours. And then, Alberta, the food's great. The air's clean. Just
The air's clean.
so stoked.
Yep. So this week, this past weekend, there was GP New Jersey.
Yep.
Good old Ixtlan Limited. Nothing too exciting going on that tournament. It's really just, I think this format's really played out. Everyone's kind of figured it out, and everyone's pretty much over it.
Yeah, it's near the end of a format where there wasn't really much, anything complicated going on to begin with. So
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely not one of the best formats we've ever had. And coming off some pretty good ones, it's kind of fallen flat and been a little disappointing for, I think, the majority of the player base. I think that's fair to say, right?
yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. But it was won by Cale Thompson, Canadian national champion from this year, Canadian guy. Awesome. Beat Seth Manfield in the finals. Like, man, this guy's a robot, right? Like, he is. He's just a magic playing robot. He just wins everything. He's always in top eights.
So who are we talking about?
Seth Manfield.
Oh, yeah.
Like, won the Pro Tour, top eighted this GP, lost in the finals, top eighted OKC the weekend before. It's just like, man, how is he so good?
Definitely seems like a contender for any top list right now.
Yeah. I think he's like 14 points ahead, second place in the race for player of the year in pro points.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
He's probably just getting lucky on a bit of a hot streak.
Yeah, clearly just getting lucky. So yeah, we won't touch much on that because there's nothing really to talk about. But yeah, this week continuing our Keep 7 series, we're going to be talking about Wrath.
Yeah. So, despite GP New Jersey, like the actual magic happening at GP New Jersey wasn't that interesting. Like, I tuned in again because I hadn't been watching coverage in a while, and it was what we expected. As you said, the format's kind of solved. And everybody seemed to know it. Like, you didn't see anybody try and play a slow deck. Everybody just picked a bunch of creatures, played a deck that could be aggressive. Yeah, lots of enchantments on creatures, not a lot of removal.
Yeah, I mean, well, if you look at Cale Thompson's winning deck list from the top 8 draft, he just played red-white aggro, really low to the ground, a lot of aggressive creatures. Just get him dead.
He had a sweet interaction that I hadn't actually thought of, but that 1/1 that gets double strike when you have a dino, he put swashbuckling on it a couple times in the top 8. Just had a 3/3 double strike on like turn 3.
Jeez.
It was pretty sweet.
Yeah, his deck was very good, and yeah, I mean, like the format's solved. It is aggressive. You want to play aggressively. You can really punish your opponents if you have a good start, just because the power level of the cards aren't really there. A lot of bad cards in the set. A lot of people, if you fumble around during the draft, your deck never really comes together a lot of the time, and then you just get smushed by all these aggressive decks.
Mm-hmm. Here's the biggest point of evidence that I saw this weekend that the format is solved. So, like in the intermission between rounds and stuff, they'll have that kind of filler content, a lot of pack one, pick ones, a lot of keeper mall where they ask pros for their opinions. So yeah, because the magic itself wasn't super interesting, I was also reading Twitch chat as I was watching coverage.
Oh man.
And a format's solved when Twitch chat is like 90% to get pack one, pick ones correct.
I've never seen that happen.
Yeah, they got most of them. It was crazy. And for like almost the right reason. They'd be like this because it's the only good blue card, and like then you could, and like they had like almost exactly the pro response, like, and they were getting the cards right. And in all of these Pack 1 Pick 1 little segments, they were doing honorary mentions of like Pack 1 Pick 2 that the
Yeah.
pros would mention.
But
They were getting those right too.
But what you're leaving out is they've been playing the exact same ones for multiple weekends, every single limited GP. And there's actually articles about those Pack 1 Pick 1s on Channel Fireball that I've saw like months ago.
Right. But this
So-
is Twitch chat. And despite overwhelming amounts of information, Twitch chat will get anything it can wrong.
True.
10-second memory is generous for Twitch chat. So
Yeah, like there are people that are probably argue that the Earth is flat in Twitch chat, and there's been a lot of articles written on that topic, Stelly.
Jeez. Yeah. See, the trick is I always keep chat closed when I'm on Twitch.
Normally I do, but because the magic wasn't interesting, I started watching it.
if you're gonna do that, just go to YouTube, Stelly. Come on, Twitch chat. Chat's part of the charm.
Oh, okay, well, like in my defense, I'll always have chat open if I'm watching some kind of like marathon on Twitch, because then chat is just gold.
Yeah,
That's the best part of the marathon.
If you aren't
That's the only
spamming
point of the
emotes,
marathon.
don't even be
But
there.
yeah, most of the time during Magic streams, it's just too toxic. I just prefer to stay away.
yeah,
I don't know.
Our Stelly's too pure for Twitch chat.
too honest.
I don't know. Like, what's the point of having it open just to watch all these people say, "Oh, how bad the players are on stream," when they're like clearly, I don't know.
Right. So like, yeah, I was watching it. The last episode we did was Envy on Keep 7, and we had talked about like, how to watch streams, how to watch,
Mhm.
and learn from players that are better than yourself. And again, just like another tally on the DWC
If you
too
want to
smart.
watch a stream and not and learn something, don't have Twitch chat open.
No. But like another tally on like the DWC is like too smart for our own good is like everything that we said not to do and every like leap in logic that we said not to make, Twitch chat was doing it. Like as you said.
Oh yeah, of course.
Anytime like a player tanked, even in the top 8, like there was a time when Mike Sigrist was like tanking on how to attack. And while he was thinking about his attacks, he was kind of rearranging his creatures, lining them up maybe with his opponents. And all the players at that level flick their cards in their hand. There's just a bunch of people in Twitch chat being like, I don't understand why he keeps rearranging his creatures. Isn't that slow play? Why is he flicking his cards? Just play one. Rather than even pause to consider what he would be thinking about when he's...
Not everyone has as many things to think about as Mike Segrist when they're playing.
Yeah, I guess.
Clearly. But yeah, so for this week, we want to talk about Wrath, and the main point we're going to connect with this one is playing tilt-free, how not to get tilted.
Yeah. Keep the anger out of your game.
Very, very important aspect of playing Magic at a competitive level, I would say.
Of any mind game.
Any mind game. What kind of mind games are you playing, Cam?
You wouldn't even know. I'm so much above you.
Yeah, but I mean, you see a lot of players who have good starts in tournaments crash and burn because of taking a rough loss, or tilt gets the best of you. You kind of throw away, you maybe misplay something early in the turn, and then the kind of whole match just goes downhill from there because you can't get over the one mistake you made.
Mm-hmm.
And you can easily throw away a tournament that way,
Yeah.
Have a 2-0 start, make one embarrassing mistake, and rip, there's your own tournament. You can't get it out of your head.
Move a little closer to your mic.
My bad.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not easy for a lot of players to do. But it is arguably one of the more important aspects of your game if you want to have any kind of success.
Yeah.
At a higher level of Magic.
And it's one of the hardest ones to practice because, like, if you want to practice how to play control, you pick up a control deck. If you want to practice, like, making your attack, like making good attacks and blocks, doing combat math, like, go play some limited. But there isn't really a situation that you can easily put yourself in where you can practice not being tilted.
Yeah, you go to F&M.
Okay, sure, but it's specifically like don't get tilted after you make a mistake. Like it's not worth it to go and like if you knowingly make a mistake to practice not being mad about that mistake. Like it's like to knowing you're taking a placebo. It won't work.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The way I like to approach it, as silly as it sounds, is I try not to let mistakes or just variance get the best of me. Just because at the end of the day, I'm playing a children's card game against other adults, sometimes children. Like, it's fine. People make mistakes. Like, the easiest thing to get tilted about in Magic is what? Variance. Like not drawing lands, drawing too many lands, etc. Right?
Yeah.
And like those things are just, they're generally out of your control. Unless you're just terribly misbuilding your deck. Generally, these things are just not within your control as a player. And like playing Magic, a game of variance, that stuff's going to happen, right? So, I mean, step one is not letting variance affect you mentally. Because it's going to happen. Like, you can't avoid it. Like,
Yeah.
it's always kind of funny to me when I'm playing, I don't know, at FNM or somewhere, and maybe I just don't draw lands or I mulligan to Oblivion. They're like, bad beats, man. Like, sorry for that. I'm like, it's gonna happen. Like, we're playing Magic. That just happens.
that
Like, you
tilts
don't
me
have to
off.
apologize.
That tilts me off more than having got stuck on lands is when my opponent tries to like apologize to me for it.
Oh yeah, that's
You
the
didn't do
worst chirp
anything.
there is.
Cam, you're not supposed to get tilted at these things.
That's I'm saying. I'm identifying a point where I can improve my game.
Yeah, no, it's just, and like not letting those things bug you is a really huge step you can take, because those things are going to happen pretty much every tournament. There's going to be tournaments where it doesn't happen at all, but I mean, that's not going to happen all the time. It's going to happen playing Magic at some point, and you just not letting variance affect you is hugely important.
And
as
I think
first
it's a
step.
big deal. I think a lot of people overestimate the effect that variance has on their games. I think a lot of people will play themselves into a corner where they need something to happen in order for this game to go well for them. When that doesn't happen and the game flops on them, I know a lot of players who will not look back and be like, well, I could have been a little more defensive here, or I could have saved up some more resources here. So if I floundered on a couple draw steps, I wouldn't have been dead in the water. But to them, those turns didn't exist. Oh, I didn't draw my land. Well, game's over. Or I didn't draw a spell on this turn, even though I used too many spells earlier in the game. I got unlucky. And yeah, like you said, variance is like something that a lot of people feel like really strongly affected by. But I also think a lot of people put them in situations where they feel like variance is, the only thing that impacted them, and that makes it much more tilting.
Yeah, we've definitely talked about this in previous episodes. I'm trying to remember which one, where we talked about learning from games you played, like looking, not just focusing on the last turn of a game, like looking back.
We've mentioned
thinking
it a
back,
couple times.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely, like players can kind of be blind to the true mistakes they've made earlier in the game, when maybe they needed to draw a land on their last turn, or they die and then they don't, or like, variance, didn't draw my land,
So unlucky.
But the whole time you put yourself in that situation by the play you made 6 turns ago.
Exactly.
And it could have totally been avoided. So
yeah, a good example of like not being affected by variance and like staying divorced from your results, which came up on coverage. Actually, it was a small snippet. It's probably not worth going back to watch, but there was a match that Marshall was commentating on that Ben Rubin was playing in, and his opponent was at 6 and he had 4 damage or something, whatever the situation was, and he was top decking, and Ben draws 1 with the wind, just kind of looks at it, doesn't react, casts it on his creature, attacks for the win. The players shake hands and they go their way. And Marshall starts commenting like, oh, he's not even smiling. He doesn't even look a little bit happy for top decking that win. And then I think it was Huey Jensen was in the commentating with him. And he's like, yeah, but that's like the type of player Ben Rubin is. If you ask him about that game, he'll just say, yeah, I drew it that time, but it could have been my opponent. It's been my opponent in the past. It's just the way it happens sometimes. I'm still, like, my opinion of this game is still about how I played the earlier turns, and not, like, I'm not happy that I top decked the win. That just is something that happened. I'm happy about a cool play I made earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, yeah, definitely.
So maybe that's a good point too. Like, don't care if you win or lose a game, but like care if you made a cool play. Like, if you make a cool play in a game and you like think it's pretty good, like remember that. And then, oh yeah, you got unlucky and lost later, but like, I still made this sweet play.
Well, I still think you should care whether you lose or win a game, but like, I don't want to say don't care too much, because the players that are going to win the tournaments are the ones that care the most about winning. And but caring too much when you lose is a huge mistake you can make. Like so this is one of the points I put on the thing, is being motivated by your losses versus being tilted by your losses. Like, if you're losing a lot, you're kind of, your head's out of the tournament and you're on till you're done, etc. And you just let all these losses kind of compile up and shake your game, and you're not motivated to play anymore. Versus Oh yeah, I took my first loss of the tournament. Shit, like I need to focus. I need to get it together. Not letting that affect you. Using your loss as a motivation to play better.
Mm-hmm.
And these are two things. I mean, that's happened to me before. I'm sure they're happened to both of you as well.
Absolutely.
Like you've been on both sides of that coin.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, like that. It's definitely huge if you want to be able to succeed at a big tournament because I mean, most of the time, no one's going undefeated. Not even the person who wins the tournament. You're going to lose at some point.
This is actually an interesting point because I'm sure we've all done this, but I've definitely like O2 dropped from weeknight events.
Yeah.
Right? Like, have you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right? Like we've all O2 dropped because whatever, I'm tired today or my opponent was tapping their hand at the wrong frequency and that annoyed me and like I just can't deal with these people. Like for whatever minor excuse you come up with, you're like a bit tilted that you're losing. That's the real reason and you leave.
Yeah.
But thinking on that, like if you want to be motivated by your losses to improve to improve the mistakes that you recognize, immediately going home and not playing Magic, by the time you play Magic again, you're going to forget whatever mistake it was you made. And you're not going to improve it. But if you recognize when you're kind of getting mad that like this is the only chance that I'm going to remember what I recognized I should improve, and I should try and improve it immediately while it's fresh in my mind, that is a way to motivate yourself to continue playing.
Yeah. I mean, you're not always going to want to keep playing after O2 drop, but I mean, it is.
Well, not
Playing
after
it,
you drop,
yeah.
you're going to want to keep playing. But when you're O2, before you drop,
Yeah.
you can keep playing.
Yeah. You're so right.
It's just something I thought of.
And I think a lot of times where you run into those scenarios where you do pull an O2 drop, it will be the time where you make a mistake, you immediately get punished for it, and you think, yeah, I know better than this, and I feel bad because this is a mistake that I should have recognized before I made it. And a lot of people just think, I'm never going to get better if I keep making these mistakes, and why am I even doing this? And those are, for me, are the scenarios where I get really frustrated and I don't want to play Magic anymore. But I think it's really important to say, like, yeah, I do know better, but I still need to take this as a learning opportunity. Maybe I should know better, but I made this mistake. I got to think more about what were the triggers that led up to this mistake and how can I recognize this in the future so that, yeah, maybe I'm tilted or I'm not playing at 100%, but I got to recognize when this happens so that if I'm in a big event, I don't throw away my event because I make a bad mistake on a scenario that I should have understood better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
That's kind of an example of like the wrong mindset. So a phrase I heard someone say at a Magic event recently.
I can't wait.
So they lose a game 3 to lose the match. And they're sitting there, they're kind of de-sideboarding. Their opponent has already gone and given in the match slip. And then they're talking to their friend and they say, I don't feel too bad about that loss in game 3 because game 3 shouldn't have happened because I know I won't normally make the mistake I did in game 1. And I won game 2. So it should have been a 2-0 for me and I don't feel so bad.
This person really knows what to take away from their games.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it's such a crazy amount of like rationalizing.
Completely backwards way of like looking at that match.
Right. And the essence of like, actually a thing we have as a show note here is like, don't dismiss mistakes that you quote unquote shouldn't have made because I know better. Like clearly you don't. You made the mistake.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, you could like being able to recognize. At least you're able to recognize the mistake you made because they're not always that obvious.
Sure. Yeah, that's good. But like thinking that, I feel like the motivation behind saying something like that is also the idea of like, I don't need to worry about that mistake because I won't make it in the future because that's not the type of mistake I make.
Mm-hmm.
But you thought that before you made that mistake. So clearly it's wrong.
Yeah.
This sort of
definitely.
thing comes up. I see it all the time when I'm playing against people who are much better than I am. So basically everyone, where on a scenario that I would normally autopilot and often will get burned by making a careless mistake, I'll see significantly better players think for a very long time about making what I think to be a very easy decision. And in that time, when I do this myself, I can collect myself and I can think about things. And, 1 in 10 times I catch that, little detail that I would have missed if I just played on autopilot and just immediately throw the game away. Much better players that I play against don't make those mistakes. And that makes a huge difference. Those are the mistakes where it's like, I will make it, immediately think, oh, I'm an idiot. I shouldn't have made that mistake. I'll never learn from it. But those better players won't make the mistake in the first place because, they're taking the time. They've learned I make these careless mistakes and this is how I prevent it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
no, definitely. But But yeah, you're like going back to this conversation you overheard. I mean, what's the best? How do you avoid that way of thinking? Like, from as an outside person hearing that, like, what should this player be doing differently to avoid kind of getting in this, like, trapping themselves and thinking, "Oh, I made this mistake. It's not something I would normally do. I dismiss it."
So I'm wondering how to phrase this other than just don't dismiss it. I'm trying to think of, okay, so maybe you recognize that there was a mistake. And if your first reaction is to say to yourself, oh, I normally wouldn't have made that mistake. Maybe, sort of set that aside and ask some other people, like, hey, this was the scenario. This is what I did. It was wrong because of this. What would you have done? Because now instead of just thinking I wouldn't have made that mistake, now you're focusing on alternative play patterns. And you're getting some input from other people, and you're just doing this sort of reflexively to ask, even if you don't feel you need to, just asking someone else about it will make you think about what else you could have done. So then when you find yourself in that scenario again, you're not just left with this like looming sense of, don't make a mistake. You're left with don't make a mistake by doing this instead. And it gives you something implementable.
Yeah, I think another good rule of thumb could be is to never make excuses for yourself and for the mistakes you made. Like, I lost that, but I don't normally make that mistake. Like, you're just making an excuse for yourself so you feel a little better about losing that round. Whereas if you just approach every tournament as, I'm not going to make excuses for the mistakes I make, the losses I take. Like, there is a reason I lost that match. What is it? How do I learn from it? How do I not do it again?
Yeah, this is kind of level 2 of no takebacks, right? Because if you watch people play casually and they make a bad attack and then they realize it and they get to take it back, they continue to make that bad attack forever.
Yeah.
Until someone says no and punishes them for it. And this is kind of the next level of abstraction of no takebacks.
Yeah, if you don't take responsibility for every play you make, you're not going to get better.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Now, that's not saying that taking responsibility will make you better, but it's a barrier.
As a mathematician, you know the difference in those wordings.
Yes.
So another big topic related to Wrath and being tilt-free is kind of not ever feeling like you deserve to win a match.
Yeah, that's the other big motivator of people being angry.
Yeah, which is definitely something I've done multiple times, and I try not to do it ever. But, like you were saying earlier before we started recording, you were playing against someone who...
I've said this on the podcast before, too. If I sit down across from someone and they don't have a playmat and they don't have sleeves and I don't know who they are, I just assume I'm going to win. And I've lost a lot of those games because I end up imagining that they will make blocks that are bad because I think they're bad. And so I attack in a way that would take advantage of those blocks. And then they just block well and my attack sucks.
It's the secret to beating Cam, everyone.
Yeah.
So just de-sleeve every time we play against each other because I never play with a playmat.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really toxic mindset to be in when you sit down across from someone who you perceive isn't as good of a player as you, to just automatically assume you're going to win every time and that you deserve to win, and say, you made a mistake that game and you end up losing because of it. And we're like, well, I deserve that win, and now you're pissed off about it, and you let that affect the rest of your tournament.
Even if you don't, I think it's more tilting. So if you assume that you should win because you think this person's not as good of a player as you, and you play and you actually don't make any glaring mistakes and they just beat you because they got lucky, that would probably be even more infuriating. Because then it's just random noob luckers like beating me in my game I'm good at. Like, well,
yeah, but like this is just avoided if you just don't think you're better than anyone else, because you're probably not.
Yeah.
It's just not a good mindset to be in ever, just assuming you're a better player, so you just deserve to win, because we all know that's not how Magic works.
You have to assume everyone you play against is at least as competent as you are. Like no play they made is a mistake until you actually punish them for it.
Yeah,
that's true.
And I mean, unless you're a robot like Seth Manifield, the best players in the tournament don't always top 8.
Right, and so this was actually, it's one of our first bullet points in the show notes, because this was one of the major things I noticed on the topic of not getting tilt-free when I was watching New Jersey coverage, is that a lot of the times, especially in day 2 and in the top 8, there will be relatively unknown players playing against pros on coverage. And the commentators will always sort of
Make
Edit-
excuses
edit
for
this
pro
out.
players.
No, not make excuses for pro players. Edit out that. But like, they always kind of undermine. That's the word. They always undermine everything they're saying with this assumption that the pro player will win, that the pro player is better.
Okay.
And so when the unknown player draws a good card, they'll be like, "Oh wow, I can't believe he doesn't look happier that he's able to like, draw well and be able to actually play a game against this pro." Like what do you mean? Like you have no idea what this guy's player skill is. Like it's just what that the pro player is good.
Yeah.
Or if the known pro player makes an attack or something that the commentators don't quite understand, it's always this is kind of weird, but he must have some reason behind it. Like, I'm not quite sure what's in his hand, but it probably makes this make sense. But the unknown player does a similar thing. Making mistakes, must be nervous.
Yeah, this happens a lot. And it's the same mistake that players make. They assume person across from the table when they're playing against a pro. They don't make mistakes. Every play they made is perfect. And, you're just waiting to get blown out on every turn. This is pretty common from a lot of people.
Yeah. And I mean, it's definitely tied to why you usually, like, obviously pro players do good at tournaments regularly because they're very, very good at the game. But I mean, they definitely do get wins because people sitting across the table from them are nervous.
And yeah, the difference I wanted to point out was that, not saying that the people who were commentating aren't strong Magic players, but they seemed to have this opinion that one person deserved to win. But when the underdog, the quote-unquote underdog, like drew well and won, none of the people who were actually playing showed any emotion. And this was in the top 8. These are actual good Magic players. Then they understand that, things could go either way because of variance, or they understand that each other are, good players. And so when the underdog drew well and won, or played well and won, commentary would say something like, "Oh, I can't believe we're not seeing more of a smile, because like he must be really happy." But like, the people actually playing weren't making those mistakes. They understood not to like tie the emotions to outcomes like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can't really make those judgments. I mean, yeah, commentators watch a lot of games of Magic, but you can't make those judgments about, seeing somebody in the top 8 whose name you're not familiar with and just assume that, they're the random FNM new blocker. There's a lot of people who are very good who will only travel to some events. And then, when they go to those events, you will see them in the top 8. And just because you don't know their name and they make a play that we don't necessarily understand as fans watching the coverage, it's one of those scenarios. You just can't write it off as a mistake until they actually get punished for it.
Yeah, that's something that Adam and I have mentioned. I'm not sure if we mentioned on the podcast, but we've talked about it before, is that there are probably quite a number of people who are as good as Seth Manfield if they practiced, or as good as whoever else, pro, but they don't have, like, they have the Magic skill, but they don't have, say, the financial means to go to as many events, so they're not as well known. And when they do go to one, they will play as well as that person. They just, not as noticed.
Yeah, I mean, Magic is definitely one of those games that rewards the people that are at every event, consistently grinding. Like, I mean, just in recent memory, like, before BBD won the world championship, like, people knew who he was before, like, because he wrote articles on SCG, but I mean, he wasn't on the Pro Tour for a very long time.
Until he went on, like, a tear of GPs?
Yeah, he just started, he qualified for the world champion that year because he got the GP slot, right? He had the most points from GPs. He just played in pretty much every single one. Like, I mean, I'm sure if the three of us went to every single GP in North America, like, we'd be on the Pro Tour.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it would
right.
happen.
Like BBD was a good player, and then he had the, capability in his lifestyle to go to a bunch of GPs, and then he became well known and did well.
Yeah.
There are players of equal caliber who are not able to travel that often yet.
Yeah.
So you could sit down across from them.
Yeah.
Or not willing to make the sacrifices that he did. If you read some of his articles, it was a tough stretch for him to get to a lot of those events. He made a lot of personal sacrifices.
Definitely. It's like, I think the majority of the community don't realize the kind of sacrifices that a lot of these, like, pro players make to get to all these events and to kind of get the status that they currently have. But I mean, connecting this all to staying,
bringing it all back
to staying tilt free. You never deserve to win, no matter who you are, who you're playing against, and letting yourself get up and being in that mindset just leads to a slippery slope of getting upset when you lose, and that's not what you want to be doing if you want to be successful at all.
There's also kind of the flip side of this, the side that we probably have more experience with, and this is playing against someone you perceive as better, sitting down across from a pro at a GP, and like, I would say that being nervous is kind of being tilted, or maybe you're a bit upset, like, oh man, why do I have to be paired with this person? Like, why'd I get so unlucky that I'm going to lose this round now?
Mhm.
And that's like a completely different kind of mindset to overcome, is playing against someone. Yeah, you were mentioning this briefly. Like, you start playing wrong because you're scared you'll get blown out always. But like, they are also just randomly drawing 7 cards off the top of the deck. They're not going to always have the answer because they're a pro.
Yeah. No, people do have like a big stigma about what it's going to be like playing against a pro. I have a story about this from GP Toronto, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It was sealed, and I scrubbed out of the main event pretty early. Played Sunday Super Series on the Sunday, and my first matchup, I go up to the board, and I see somebody pointing at Shahar Shenhar's name. And is like, oh well, this is whoever's playing against him is really unlucky. And then I go up and see I'm the one who's playing against him. This is immediately after he won Worlds in Modern right before. And I just went up and thought, okay, like, I can't have the mindset of this person. I can't go into my match thinking how unlucky I am before I've even drawn my first 7,
Yeah.
You just got to go down and play it like it's any other match.
Which
Did you win?
I dumpstered him.
Oh, yeah.
Not true at all. I got very lucky and he got very unlucky.
But no, that mindset of play it like it's any other match, you kind of memeified and took to a joke when you were playing against, who was the guy that built Rally?
Against Ben Stark.
No, it
No,
was
sorry,
Matt
Matt
someone.
Nass.
Sorry, yeah,
Matt Nass, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, it was at another GP, and you saw you had been paired with Matt Nass.
GP
and
New Jersey.
you knew who he was because you were playing a deck he had designed.
Yes, I was playing Rally. He was playing a what's that enchantment? Lets you tap all your guys for
Cryptolith, right?
Yeah, Cryptolith
Yeah.
rights.
Yeah.
And like I try to go into all these matches with well-known players. Like, I'm pretty aware of who most of the well-known players are. I like to go into all these matches assuming they're like anyone else, which means I don't know who they are. And maybe it's because I'm just a little silly about it, but it helps me get in the mindset if I treat them exactly like anyone else. So usually when I go into a match, if I see somebody like me has the name, say, Ronald, I'll say, hey, my name's Ron. If your name's also Ron, do you prefer Ron or Ronald? So I saw I was playing against Matt Nass, except in the pairings list, it shows Nass Matthew as the name. So I'm like, okay, go up. And I got to get in this mindset where I'm not playing against anyone special. I'm going to play well, like I always do, I hope. And so I go up to the table. I'm like, hey, Matthew. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, do you prefer Matt or Matthew? And I got some looks around the table from the other people because I think we were both like 8-0 at this point. So I recognized most of the people at the table. And I got some looks, but that's kind of how I have to set the stage. If I already go into this where I know I'm like playing up to somebody who's on some ivory tower, you've already lost.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, and not like you're going to get nervous when you play against someone who, like a pro player who you always see on coverage. Like, it's going to happen. It's not totally avoidable, but you can't let it affect your game. And I think it's kind of funny how you go about kind of evening the playing field in a way mentally. We're like, yeah, I have no idea who this guy is. You're just another random.
It helps me set it up. And, I don't cut him any extra slack either. There was one turn in that match where I felt that he was playing too slowly. And I don't care that you're a pro player. You're playing too slowly. I'm going to ask you to play faster. So I told him, like, hey, I know you're playing a really complicated deck, which he designed. And I was playing a deck that he designed as well. But I was like, I'd appreciate if you could play it a little faster because I don't want our match to go to time. And he kind of looked at me, and so did everyone else at the table. And then he said, okay. And he didn't have any problem with that. Like, he knew, I feel, that he had taken a long time on this turn. And, that's what it is. You can't cut them any extra slack just because they're a pro. Treat them like anyone else.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's a great way to
Another
approach
point
it.
is you might act, okay, I'm not about to say that you might be advantaged in your match against these players, but you can use our previous discussion against them. They don't know who you are. They might think you're bad and they might play sloppy. So as long as you sort of keep your game tight and don't make any glaring mistakes, they could throw away the game thinking that you're trash, which I've had happen. I played against Shaheen Sarani once at GP Providence, and we were like X2, X3, like just playing for top 32 or something. Like, it wasn't a big deal to him. I was still pretty excited about it, but he was so checked out of our games that he was just talking to like fans who were sitting next to him, and he just like clearly didn't care. So I just like sort of refocused my attention, made sure I didn't make any mistakes, and then he just, countered the wrong thing, didn't care, took some extra damage where he didn't need to. He was playing control. Yeah, he just like stopped being invested in the game and completely threw it away.
Yeah.
So if they're in that mindset, then it doesn't matter that they're a pro. They're already punting like anybody else.
I had a scenario like that at GP Toronto 2-3 years ago, something like that. I was playing against Mike Segrist in round 13, I believe. We finished our match. I win in 3. And the first thing he does is he turns to a friend of his who was watching and was like, I missed the days before we were sharing deck lists on the internet. And I was like, a little insulted, but I thought, yeah, if you've already written me off based on my deck choice.
Because you were playing the mirror, right?
Exactly. Yeah. We were playing the mirror. If you'd already written me off based on my deck choice and not based on how I was playing, then, if you're not going to think about my plays as being strong, then I already have an advantage against you. If you just assume that I'm, just playing off the top with the deck that you designed, I feel like I'm advantaged in that matchup.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, your opponent, like if your opponent makes a play that you think, that's a little questionable. I don't know why they did that. Maybe they made a mistake. Like tricking yourself into thinking, they're making this mistake. They must suck. I'm going to win this easily. Like that's, you just lose all the time if you start thinking about it that way.
Exactly.
Maybe to you, it looks like something ridiculous, but maybe there actually is a game plan and it's going to get you in a couple turns. Like you never know for sure.
Isn't that the storyline of like, any anime based around like because there's anime about like people playing in the chess club. There's anime about people playing like in the Go club.
Nerd.
Yeah, I'm gonna weeb out for a moment.
No.
But even like Yu-Gi-Oh anime, right? Someone will make some play and they'll be like, that doesn't make any sense. He must still be dead. What could his trap card be? And the plot line is always that this play that doesn't make sense is actually a genius move, thinking like 10,
way above the level of everyone else.
Like a 200 IQ play looking 3 turns into the future. And so the moral of the story is like these are genius. These could be like a genius setup, and you can't dismiss it.
That's actually how you have to play, though, right? Like you see your opponent make a play that you think is questionable, and maybe it's a mistake. I would much rather, think that like have my opponent make a play which is a mistake, and I think, they might be about to get me. I have to play around these things, and then not get punished because they just made a mistake and didn't have some way of getting me. Or if they actually did have something, not get punished because I played around it. Then same way, like they make a play which looks like a mistake, I just, play it as if it is a mistake, and then I get blown out because they actually were making the 200 IQ play. Like you can never make that judgment.
This is something that I actually first learned from like watching StarCraft coverage and StarCraft streams. Is so if you're unfamiliar with StarCraft, there's kind of certain times in each game when events normally happen. Say you make your base, you expand your base at 3 minutes. But if you don't, it means that you are going to do a big attack with one base. And so someone was talking about this and they said, say you go and like look at what your opponent's doing and it's past 3 minutes and they haven't expanded their base, you're probably getting attacked. So you should make a bunch of defensive units. It could be the case that this is actually a mistake and your opponent's bad and they're expanding their base at 4 minutes because they're slow. And that doesn't matter. You're still not going to lose to them. And now you have a bunch of units. You can just go attack them because they're bad. So, like, it's okay if you play too defensively because you don't understand what your opponent's doing. It's preferred.
Yeah. There's a line where you can play too defensively and waste resources, but you can never just write off plays that might be a mistake and just assume your opponent's a dumpster, You're going to lose more games than you're going to win by catching people making mistakes.
Yeah. And there was a point I think I had that I thought of before we started recording about, say you're playing against someone who is actually competent, not someone who's like...
Not likely.
Not likely. But say you're in like the final rounds of a GP or something, and you're X2, X whatever. Also not likely. Imagine you are a player who could get...
How deep down this rabbit hole do we got to go?
Right. But like,
I totally threw you off, Nate.
Yeah, you threw me off. So, say your opponent makes a mistake. If they have any level of competency, they will recognize that this was a mistake, and this will probably refocus their attention, and they will now play tighter for the rest of the match. So, if you see this mistake and you start playing looser because you think, they're bad, I can take advantage of that, you're now playing against a better opponent than you were 30 seconds ago, and you're playing worse.
Exactly. And that's one of the great ways to get tilted. You bringing it all back to the theme. You think that you catch your opponent making a mistake, and so you can play a bit fast and loose for the rest of the game, and then you lose, then you go into the rest of the event thinking, oh man, my opponent was so bad he made this mistake, and then I lost.
Yeah,
That's
how unlucky am I?
exactly
So tilting.
the most unlucky. That's a
Yeah.
great way to throw a tournament away. Those are the scenarios where you just have to think, oh, what do I take away from this? What's my learning point? You don't get tilted. Instead, you think, all right, I can't underestimate my opponents. I know that this is a hurdle I got to get over, and in the next game, I can't take this with me. It's just I just got to win one game at a time.
Yeah. So if you see your opponent make a mistake, if it's because they're bad, okay. In that scenario, you're going to win anyway. Probably.
But you won't always know that.
Right. You won't know. But in the scenario that it was actually a mistake and they didn't notice, then you'll probably be fine. So just continue playing. If they notice it's a mistake and they play tighter, you need to play tighter also.
I think
And
you
if
should
they're
just
setting up
always
for
play
something in the
tighter.
future, you need to play tighter also. So 2 out of 3 times, you end up
Just
like
play tighter.
Right, exactly.
Cam with the game theory. Stelly, just always play perfect.
Yeah, man. Like, just always play tighter. You think your opponent make a mistake? Play tighter. Take advantage of them. Get them.
Yeah, exploit the mistake.
Yeah.
The opposite problem happens a lot too, where people will like go into a match thinking that, their opponent didn't make a mistake, but they've already gone far ahead, or say they're up a game and, their draw is great and they're just playing off their hand. They're not playing against their opponent. I've done this lots of times where I look at my hand, I'm like, geez, I can never lose this game. And then you think that you had all the luck in the world and you lose your game because you didn't play it well. It's just one of those scenarios where you had all the tools and it was entirely your responsibility. You can never blame that on luck. But people come away thinking, I'm the unluckiest. And that is a great way to go on tilt. You just can't have that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
This hand is so good it can never lose, but my opponent literally hit the 0 outer and beat it.
Yeah. I don't know. This kind of all ties into like bad beat stories. Like, just don't tell them. Like, it's not helping. You're just making yourself more tilted by telling them, like, no one wants to hear them.
No way, man. I want you guys to criticize me for my bad beat stories. I actually genuinely like it where I come away from a match and I'm like, guys, listen to how insanely unlucky I am. And somebody's like, well, why didn't you just do this? And I'm like, oh yeah, if I made that different play 2 turns before, then I would have actually had the resources I needed to get out of this scenario. And you can get stuck in your head, right? You would never see that until you run it by someone else. Again, it's like you autopilot these lines and you just don't even question the alternative.
Yeah, if your bad beat story is like a series of turns going wrong for you, like there's probably something you could have done. If your bad beat story is like most of our blowouts that we tell, yeah, those are just hilarious.
Those are hilarious,
Right.
Yeah.
And so you
Worth more than winning, really.
Right, but the average bad beat story that you hear, or the average like complaint about luck, isn't an actual blowout. It's just someone making a mistake and someone else being upset about it.
There are enough decisions in Magic that if your bad beat story is like 4+ turns, then you probably had another line.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, what main things to take away from this conversation? One, we talked about not letting variance mess up your head.
Yeah, that's
It's going to
step one.
happen. You're going to lose because you don't draw lands. You're going to lose because you drew too many lands. You're like, it's Magic. It's going to happen. Avoiding getting tilted from things like that is definitely one of the more important things you can do to improve your game. Step 2, never think you're better than your opponent or you deserve to win a match.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like, I don't know. I'm not even, like, no particular order. They're all
They're all important, and you should do all of them.
Yeah. It doesn't matter who your opponent is. Like, don't let who your opponent is affect how you play your games. Whether they're a pro or some random person you've never seen, or I don't know, a 10-year-old kid. Like,
I've
I've
met
lost
some
to my
10-year-old
fair
kids
share of
who are like
10-year-olds.
quite good at Magic.
man, you can never let who your opponent is affect how you play. Or
Who were those 2 kids that top-aided the SCG Invitational?
I don't know.
I forget their last name, but it's like a family of like siblings. They always play. They were playing Mono Red.
No, you're thinking about. Like, I know you're thinking about the Kiefer brothers.
Yeah, the
who are
Kiefer
on,
brothers.
but they didn't top 8 the Invitational.
Okay.
It was 2 separate kids.
Right. So they're kind of known now around the SCG circuit, but like clearly they're good Magic players. Can you imagine how many like wins they got from their opponents playing sloppy when they first started going to SCG events? No, I'm just playing against some kid, and then they just get killed immediately by like a good mono red draw by a player piloting it well. Like,
yeah, definitely. And then another big thing is not letting your losses tilt you off, rather being motivated by your losses to do better and play better and learn from your mistakes. Hugely important. Yeah, just getting mad because you're losing is not going to help you get better or turn things around and start winning at all.
Winning's kind of boring. And winning easily is well.
Winning's the best.
It's good. It's I try to win as much as possible.
I miss back when I could turn 1 Thoughtseize, turn 2 Pack Rat, and just win always.
But in like a lot of games I play, Magic,
I want winning to be max easy.
Magic, other games, etc. If I win a game, I'll just be like, oh, cool, won, sweet, and I'll stop thinking about that game.
This is why I don't play Control.
But it's when
winning with Control is hard. I want things to be max easy.
But it's when I lose that I actually am like, okay, there's something here that I need to reflect upon.
And I think that's a really important message we kind of touched on, but didn't talk about explicitly. Like every mistake you make is an opportunity to get better. You got to look at every mistake you made and think, what were my decisions that led me into this, and how can I not do that next time?
Right, like Seth Manfield, I pity that guy because he can't improve.
There's nothing to learn.
He doesn't make mistakes anymore.
Literally the best.
That's
Never
like
makes mistakes.
so much of Magic that he can't. It's like those people say, "Oh, I wish I could go and like rewatch this show for the first time." It's so much fun in Magic of like discovering and fixing your like improving. It's just taken from him.
What a poor guy.
Didn't he make a mistake in the Pro Tour he won?
Yeah, obviously not. He won.
Yeah.
No, he did. He legitimately made a mistake.
Yeah.
On top of it didn't matter because he's just insane. But
that happens a lot too. Yeah, like another point of evidence for like, don't get worried if you're playing against a pro player. Like the one I'm thinking of is Jerry T when he won the Pro Tour with Zombies.
Yeah,
just fired off a Grasp of Darkness on a 4/5 and then untapped.
Yeah. I remember that.
And he like casts it, and his opponent's like resolves, and he like looks at it and he goes, just like untaps his lands and keeps playing. Right? It was a perfect example of it wraps up everything perfectly. Pro players and players who you think are better than you are not as good as you think they are, but they can play out of their mistakes much better than most people, and that it gives them so many points.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for joining the club this week. Do we have a blowout?
No, not really.
I actually have a reverse blowout story.
Oh,
it's on theme with the tilt.
Reverse blowout.
So we were talking about how you can't let a mistake just throw away the rest of your tournament. So, the scenario where, say, you're 4-0 in some event and then you make some dumb punt and, the rest of the tournament's gone. A good buddy of ours a couple of years ago at a GP, he has 2 buys going into this GP, loses the first 2 matches in a row, and then wins out for the rest of the GP until he loses his win in into top 8. And, I think that's the story you got to take away from this. Like, if he was tilted, there's no way that ever happens, ever.
Oh, God, no.
But because he's basically a robot, he's 100% tilt free for the rest of the day, the rest of the weekend, and wins, I don't know how many matches in a row. That math is hard, like 10 or whatever. And then, he loses 1. Oh, well. But, he won 10 in a row just because he was able to drop that tilt after the end of round 4 where he stopped losing.
Yeah, definitely not many people who would be able to do that.
No, it's insane.
Oh, yeah. Who was it?
Justin.
It was Justin, GP Toronto, right?
Yep.
I remember watching him lose his win, and that was so sad.
Yep.
Man. Yeah.
Oh, one thing that we want to mention. Shout out to a listener of ours, Trevor. Got us some custom sleeves.
Man, yeah, those sleeves are so sweet.
They are okay. So we'll get a picture of them and post them up, but they're actually sweet. So he like got the new DWC logo put on them, and like as like a Christmas gift gave us all a bunch of sleeves. So I'm super stoked to be using them.
Yeah, they're awesome.
They're really nice.
I wish I could use them. It's just there's no events and
there's no motivation.
And you can't beat Cam if you use sleeves.
Right.
Not
But
that I have to worry about beating Cam ever.
Unfortunately, you can't have custom sleeves as cool as ours, but if you need sleeves or deck boxes or anything else, you can check out wizardtower.com for all your single needs.
Exactly.
Shipped to Canada and the US. Sponsor this podcast.
Yep. Great store. Great content, i.e. this podcast and all their articles. All that fun stuff. We love the Wizard Tower.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely check them out. And yeah, however you listen to this podcast, whether it's Podbean, iTunes, or your podcast app, share it with your friends. Leave us a review. Word of mouth is the best way to keep this thing going. You can also get in contact with us on Facebook and Twitter We are both those places. Can send us a message if you have a cool blowout story that we'll tell on air. We also love hearing ideas for new episodes. Maybe there's a certain topic we haven't covered,
Let us
which
know
is
if you want Ron
probably
to come back.
impossible because we're 66 episodes in. But
yeah,
if you want to hear us talk about something or reiterate something maybe that we didn't go as in depth on, shoot us a message. We'll definitely answer you. We have an excellent response rate.
Yeah. So give us a like because we are definitely better than every other podcast and we deserve to beat them.
That's a fact.
We'll see you all next week. Thanks for listening.
Bye.